bringing in Mike Buchanan later in the show. Greetings to you, Gunnarsson.
Good evening. How's it going? Enjoying the warm weather?
Yeah, I'm trying to cope with the very high temperatures, still like around 35, 36 degrees in Celsius, even though it's 9 p.m. In Romania. It's been over 45 degrees in Celsius around noon time. It's a severely hot day, but then again, pretty much as expected at the end of June, early July. Almost every year it happens like this, but it still kind of takes me by surprise when it finally starts happening, especially given that the early period of this summer has been unusually cold. But otherwise, everything works just fine. Before saying anything else, I'll probably need to remind everyone, I don't think I did that last show, because of various idiotic companies, the address for the chat server has been changed to nonmarxism.serveirc.com. That is serveirc.com. So nonmarxism.serveirc.com. Same connecting ports as opposed to noip.biz as it used to be. Anyway, Mr. Gunnarsson?
Yep, and
how's been the weather on your end?
the weather on my end, that's been mostly good. It's warm but not unreasonably hot most of the time. Like last weekend there were like 2 or 3 days where it was oppressively hot, but most of the time it's been just sort of 25 degrees, that sort of thing. So it's quite nice.
Check your cold privilege.
Yeah. I'm doing that every day. I have it written on my calendar.
All right, last show we
ritual.
ended it abruptly because you dropped out and basically I was a patientless bastard.
Yeah.
So we probably should start with that one.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was my internet or whether it was Google Hangout not cooperating, but I just couldn't reconnect. And then just
I haven't heard your last sentence.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Oh yeah.
You are breaking up.
You didn't hear my last sentence?
You're breaking out severely.
I'm breaking up again.
Yep.
That is not good. Then it is, I guess, my internet. So maybe just start with this article. We just start with
you're breaking out so badly.
Sounds like he's trying to pull a Wayne's World on us, man. Can you translate that? Get that order out?
Yeah, the extreme heat in here hasn't managed to melt the cables for broadcast, but it somehow melted yours. All right, until Jon figures out his internet, let's go in the pre-established order. Going to Spain, in Sevilla. The Andalusian Board of Education requires teachers to demonstrate that they have not committed any sexual offense. An instruction of the Ministry of Education, the head of which is Adelaida de la Calle, dated June the 20th, states that it is mandatory that all teachers who work daily with underage students prove that they prove not to have been convicted of sexual offenses or authorize the administration to access the sexual offenses files in case they have. The deadline is 10 days, and the measure, which is based on a 1996 provincial law, has outraged a sector of the Andalusian faculty. It is absurd to split us and prove that our behavior has never contained any element of this kind, which is a violation of our presumption of innocence, and to do that within 10 days? That's absurd, argues Carlos Rodriguez Estacio, vice president of a teachers' union. He says that he and the members of his union feel utterly insulted by the fact that the measure involves all teachers, noting that it would have been more logical to simply verify the issue with police records without messing around with all the teachers' activities. The discomfort is perceived as even higher since the initiative does not affect other professions. Rodriguez Estacio says ironically that it would be interesting to ask politicians before holding public office to certify that they have never stolen anything in their lives, doctors that they have not attacked anyone, and judges that they have never committed a crime. If that happened, emphasizes the union leader, practitioners of these groups would rise in outrage. He regrets that the teacher profession is a very discredited profession where demagoguery makes it especially vulnerable to such damage. And suddenly we're all suspected of a criminal sexual conduct until we prove otherwise or authorize anyone else to look at our records. It is a way of doing things that is inefficient and very insulting from the professional point of view. Rodriguez Estacio also criticizes the requirement of the Ministry of Education that it takes place in the period of evaluation and examinations, which is, in his words, the worst moment of the school year. Now, isn't that great? Now, for the record, in Spain, professors, primary school teachers in particular, have been subjected to several scandals that pretty much mirror the scandals in which Catholic priests have been involved in the past. Now, the thing is that in Spain, as opposed to other places where similar scandals have occurred, in Spain, there have been several, how should I call them, societal reactions maybe, in which basically defenders of the priests said, look, yes, it is unfortunate that there have been priests who abuse children, but the core of the sexual abuse on children is occurring in schools and not in churches. And believe it or not, there have been quite a lot of individuals within the government who actually took this seriously. So that's where this kind of memo comes from, and that was basically the background rationale to impose such thing. On the other hand, one cannot stop from thinking that it is how should I put it, a mirroring of the tactics used by the previous government. 2 governments ago. I'll explain in a minute. Because 2 governments ago, if you remember, we even had a Spanish feminist come here and explain us, there was still the closing stages of what is now called basically the gender Stalinist era of Spain, when the feminists would basically suspect anyone of criminal sexual conduct because potato. Now, given that that government lost the elections in a landslide, everyone hoped that the next administration would be less fanatical about it. And it was, well, until now, when they found an appearingly non-feminist way of pretty much starting doing the same thing all over again. And this time, surprisingly, they started with the teachers. Now, what I don't know is why they started with the teachers, in the sense that the teachers were usually the last ones to be attacked. They would usually start with kindergartens and of course the family courts, and then it would have been the primary school teachers. So I don't know why they started it. Maybe they're changing the order. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Huff?
No, none at all. Go ahead.
Yeah, I see that Mr. Gunnarsson hasn't yet recovered from his downfall.
Oh, here he is. Let's hope this works.
Mr. Gunnarsson? Mr. Jon? Mr. Gunnarsson? I guess still not yet. Before going to the next one that is not in German, that is, Minjin says in the chat room that there is such thing already working in Australia called working with children check, that it's more thorough than a police background check. Yes, I'm not convinced. How should I put it? I'm not convinced that it is particularly necessary. Basically, when I hear these kinds of things, alarm bells start ringing at the back of my head, and it screams, pedo hysteria society, watch out, basically. Because I think that if if there are ways to prevent such thing, there are better ways that don't involve automatically presuming individuals to be sexual abusers. I don't think that wasting so many resources in investigating the entire professoral body, and especially not in the middle of the examinations as the Spaniards are doing, I don't think that's efficient. I think that doesn't prevent uh, any single instance of sexual abuse, whereas it wastes the resources of everyone, including the students who may see their exams postponed and things of that nature. So I don't know. I'm not convinced that such systems work. Mr. Gunnarsson, have you fixed your internet connection? I guess not. In that case, let's go to the next one that is not in German. Coming from Breitbart, I actually knew about this story at least 5 days ago, but it was only in Swedish. So I guess Breitbart have upped their game and they now have a more reliable correspondent in Sweden. Police launch the Don't Touch Me wristbands to stop migrant sex attacks in Sweden. Sweden's police chief unveiled the force's latest weapon in the fight against sexual assault: wristbands reading "Don't touch me." Amazing. A recent Swedish press release warns that groping is a crime. In it, the country's national police chief, Dan Eliasson, said no one should have to accept sexual molestation, so do not grope, and if you are groped, report it to the police, end quote. Mr. Eliasson mentioned a variety of actions, such as a hand tucked between the legs, a hug from behind in the crush at a club or festival, and one person holding somebody while another grabs their breasts, describing them as situations many young people recognize too well. The press release announced that police intend to equip young women with wristbands with the slogan "Don't touch me." This will happen over the summer at festivals and other events for young people. By wearing these wristbands, Sweden's police chief said, young women will be able to make a stand. It is unclear how effective the wristbands, which read "Don't touch me" in Swedish, will be in preventing attacks, as the majority of sex attack perpetrators are thought to be recent migrants who are unlikely to be able to read them. Mr. Eliasson suggested that by wearing those accessories, women would also be able to draw attention to the issue of sexual assault and urge those affected to report. A Swedish police report released last month noted that the country had the worst rates of sexual violence against women in Europe. The report acknowledged migrants were responsible for the bulk of the problem, but the police were accused of making excuses for the perpetrators. Although sexual harassment and assault are commonplace in many Muslim countries, the report blamed Nordic alcohol culture and masculinity for the wave of assaults that have terrorized Swedish women. Migrant sex gangs are alleged to have been roaming this Stockholm music festival for 12 to 17-year-olds for the past 2 summers. One leaked police memo indicated that unaccompanied youth migrants from the Middle East were responsible for most of the attacks. Sexual assaults were reported at Swedish music festivals Arvika in 2006 and 2010, Emmaboda in 2014, and Bråvalla in 2015. Police were accused of covering up the attacks. Breitbart London reported that Stockholm Council and festival organizers in the country knew sex attacks by migrants were endangering women, but thought it would have been irresponsible to speak out about the trend.
So it seems that I'm able to reconnect now. Can you understand me?
Yes, I can barely hear you, although you keep on muting your
Can you
mic.
barely hear me?
Why are you
It's
keep
not muted
muting?
now.
No, it appears muted, and you're muted.
I'm not muted on my end.
Yeah, now you're not. But whenever you shut up, it appears muted.
Okay. But can you understand me reasonably clearly now?
Somewhat reasonably. You're still breaking out, but maybe slightly less than before you dropped out completely.
Well, this sucks.
Oh, it's horrible. And now you're probably dropping out entirely. Anyway, until Mr. Gunnarsson probably makes some more wizardry in a very high-end attempt to fix this mess. So, basically, what is this? Sorry, I can't stop myself from laughing. Those of you who have read about the Rotherham situation in Britain, it's basically Rotherham but on a national scale, because whenever it comes to covering up for the actions of culturally incompatible migrants, Sweden is definitely the champion of that. I mean, nobody else can beat Sweden at this sport of covering up the crimes whenever it's politically incorrect to expose them. But this particular measure, what I find it completely appalling is the fact that nobody seems to be noticing how insane it is to say that, we are unable to protect our citizens from sexual crimes, so we basically ask half of our population to wear wristbands reading "Don't touch me." How does that? How is that supposed to make any sense? It's just I'm trying to sound cogent in here for the simple reason that it's so mind-boggling that no matter how much one tries to make sense of it, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, if wherever one tries to, whatever one tries to say, it's politically incorrect, because it's now politically incorrect to say that, you know, a significant chunk of recent migrants into Sweden are indeed culturally incompatible with the values of Sweden. It, no matter how harsh that may sound, it's still true. But even if you admit that, then the measures taken by the police to protect their population are so ludicrous that one wonders, why do the Swedes still tolerate this? I mean, really, why isn't Sverige Demokraterna having the majority in the parliament by now? Amazing. Anyway, until Mr. Gunnarsson finishes that, Minjin asks, are there wristbands available for little boys too? I have never heard of any such measure. So, to the best of my knowledge, no, there are no wristbands available for little boys too. All right, let's go to something that makes so much sense that it doesn't. Coming from the Huffington Post, why do women not want to be feminists? And the article starts with saying feminism 4 times, and then goes like this. I don't know what connotations the word brings to your head, but to me it brings forth only one. A person, not a woman, but a person who is a believer that there should be the social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. Apparently, said person will strive to live their lives in such a way that calls and fights for this equality in everything that they do. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Actually, it doesn't, but anyway. It's pretty straightforward, so unless you identify as a sexist, everyone should be a feminist, or so it would seem. So why do people who don't identify as sexists have a strong reluctance to identify as a feminist? Many women across the world, in fact, refuse to identify as feminists. They sometimes take to Twitter with the oddly edited photos of themselves holding up little pieces of paper explaining why they don't believe in equal rights for men and women. These protest placards have appeared with varying motifs. They range to expressing a love for men holding doors open and strange anecdotes of why they, as women, actually enjoy being in the kitchen. Because if you weren't already aware, women live in kitchens. It is universal knowledge that all women everywhere just love kitchens, unless you're a feminist, in which case you're actually allergic to kitchens. Skipping a bit more. Anyway, back to my point about anti-feminist placards, I remember coming across one lady in particular who had stated that she was not a feminist because she, in fact, liked taking care of her husband. 2 weeks later, I had to explain to my landlord why there was a head-shaped dent in my wall. Skipping a bit more. and this is where it becomes interesting, as a 19-year-old, I get a mixed bag of reactions when I proclaim my feminist ways. Women my age usually have one of two reactions. The first is a slightly awkward look followed by, oh right, so what does that actually mean then? Then, when I proceed to explain, I see her running, screaming into the kitchen about how I don't shave my armpits. I would follow her and prove that I do shave my armpits, but she's in the kitchen, obviously, and we all know I can't go in there. Plus, that would also be a bit weird, me charging into a kitchen waving my hairless armpits around like some kind of pissed-off Budechia in a Veet advert. Even if I wasn't allergic to kitchen, Evelyn Bankhurst would probably resurrect herself in front of the doorway and strike me down on the spot. Fucking feminists. Skipping a bit more, there is a serious issue with young women in the United Kingdom being fearful of the term feminist. Whether it's not wanting to identify as a feminist out of the fear of rejection by men, if you're straight that is, or being fearful of feminists in general. Ladies my age just don't want the label. Like last season's miniskirt thong, it's spoiled goods. There is a sense that women retreat to the safety, quote-unquote safety of men by rejecting feminism in order to make themselves more appealing to men. It's an odd concept to grasp. Essentially, they would rather join the men in their bashing of women in order to not get bashed themselves. That's how I view those women, who do the quote "I'm not a feminist" end quote thing on Twitter. Instead of tackling the ideology that makes them fear rejection by men, they go and join it. They try and take down feminists in order to get the man's attention, like, look at me, I'm humiliating women as well. Parenthesis, please have sex with me, end quote. It's not nice to feel like I'm reducing those women to only be interested in the sexual affections of men, because of course there are so much more than that, but more often than not, it is the case. These are the kind of women that write in magazines about men will or won't fancy you if you wear this mascara, push-up bra, new pair of tits, and eyebrows from your surgeon. The kind of women who won't laugh at your joke or in fact acknowledge your presence, but when the man next to them tells it again a minute later, they'll laugh hysterically and flutter their eyelids. Those kinds of girls, even when you are the ripe old age of 11, mock you so mercilessly in front of a group of boys for having hairy legs, and you spend the whole night in tears trying to trim them with your mom's nail scissors and end up slicing your skin. So whilst it is a quite funny memory, the scar runs a bit deeper than my left calf, and the feeling is still with me nearly 10 years later. It's the same feeling I got when a girl asked if the modeling shoot I was doing was for bigger girls because I was a size 10, or the feeling I got when somebody sexually assaulted me in a nightclub and then called me a slut when I confronted him. It's all the same ideology, big or small. These feelings are are amongst thousands of young women. This is what I take issue with. Apart from being plain irritating and unnecessarily cruel, it's irreversibly damaging. Women like this will smugly state why they're not feminist, but in my experience, they're nearly always only ever doing it because they're scared men won't fancy them anymore, especially if they start reading Mary Wollstonecraft and wearing Doc Martens, or, demanding equal pay. And then much more incoherent rambling follows, but I think we kind of get the gist of this article. Now, is it me, or this is basically maybe not the most, but definitely in top 3 the most misogynistic things published in the current year? I mean, it's 2016, and the feminists publish the top tier of misogynistic literature, basically. I mean, that's how I view it, because to this individual, and mind you, one can dismiss this individual as, well, whatever, she's 19, what the hell she knows, and that's a fair point up to an extent. But then we do remember this is the kind of common attitude when it comes to our philosophical opponents. I mean, in the mind of this individual, there is no such thing as women by themselves thinking about things, reading about things, and reaching to the conclusion that differs quite a bit, or maybe may indeed be complete opposite from the conclusions that ideological feminists have reached to. It does seem to me that these kinds of individuals quite simply do not understand that there is such thing as as women thinking for themselves. And whenever I hear such articles, yeah, sorry for the interruption. I'm trying to either get Mr. Gunnarsson back into the show or get him to send me his news document, which may or may not contain some translations of the articles in German. And apparently, according to him, my internet provider is taking a day off. I can't even uphold a 50 kilobyte Word document. Absolutely amazing. Anyway, one last thing about this particular article by this 19-year-old. When will the time come when they'll realize that they have lost the cultural war? I mean, when it comes to the United Kingdom, something like 7% of the total female population of the United Kingdom identifies as feminist. And if you look even deeper into that particular 7%, a significant chunk of those are older than 50, basically. So when it comes to young women basically run away as fast as they can from the feminist label. And I don't blame them. I mean, why would anyone blame them? And instead of rebranding themselves, and I mean, if there is any feminist listening to this, which somehow I doubt, but if there is, here's free advice. If you want to start winning again, you probably will never start winning again, but if you want to at least have an honest shot about it, maybe you should start rebranding yourself. And by rebranding yourself would be, stop being cunts. Because if your reaction to women rejecting your ideology is to tell them that they have internalized misogyny, or that it's men's fault that they think differently from you, or things of that nature, if that's your reaction, well, how do you say you're toast, basically? Anyway, let's get to the next one. I'm going to try my best to not sound completely wrong on this one, but it's basically my neighborhood German. Coming from tagesspiegel.de. It's from a German newspaper, but the case is from Switzerland. Basically, the title: Why should men be compelled to handshake foreign women? The handshake cases are piling up. In Switzerland, 2 Muslim students were officially obliged to shake their teacher's hand. In Sweden, a devout politician had to resign because he refused the reporter's hand. The CDU politician, Julia Klöckner in Germany, had burst an appointment because an imam refused to shake her hand. Now it's a Berlin imam and the teacher, because she has vainly because the imam has refused to shake her hand, and the parents are outraged about it. Then there will be people who recognize the downfall of the West in such disputes, and they are, of course, correct. The West has it, thanks to education, so far quite well when it comes to being reasonable. But now that reasonability is threatened to be lost. In which feudal society do we want to come back to when such a move is perceived as so bad when it comes to sanctioning greeting rituals? Why should men, regardless of faith, be forced against their will to handshake stranger women or foreign women? Whatever. We live in a free country where physical contact takes place by mutual agreement, or it doesn't take place at all. The last state was the handshakes was the doctrine of the last state where the handshakes lied as a doctrine was the GDR, the German Democratic Republic, or East Germany, and that one got a very well deserved end. Very interesting, isn't it? Now, to be fair, in order to comment this, I really need a discussion partner, because as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty much a non-subject. I mean, Muslims don't want to handshake the hands of women. Well, so bloody what? I mean, there are quite a lot of problems brought by the cultural incompatibility between Islam and general way of life in Europe. This is probably the most irrelevant point, the most irrelevant point of contention between the two cultures. On one hand, on the other hand, handshaking itself varies even within Europe itself. There are places in Europe where it's not popular at all, such as France, such as Italy, and there are places where it's very popular, such as Sweden, indeed. So, why having to involve some sort of legal proceeding within this is pretty much beyond me, because at the end of the day, it's such a minuscule aspect that I don't know. I'm not convinced at all that it's really an issue. There are issues brought by the cultural clash between be- radical Islam or even basic Islam and the rest of us, that wasting so much time with this particular aspect is, whatever. Anyway, finally, I've gotten the translations from Mr. Gunnarsson. But hey, at least I'm proud of myself. I read one article in German without having translated by anyone. So I guess my German isn't really that rusty as I thought it is. Minjin says all this sounds like manspreading. Yes, it kind of does. Yes, it kind of does. I mean, just like manspreading, I guess it's annoying if you're a woman and the guy doesn't want to shake hands with you. Maybe. I'm not even convinced it's annoying, but let's presume it is. Yeah, well, so fucking what? Deal with it. Anyway, let's get to the next one. Coming from FOTS, that would be Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Title, Most of the Victims Are Boys. 6 years after it became known that there had been a large number of cases of abuse in the Catholic Church, the preliminary results of a research project on the causes and scope of the abuse has now been published. Among other things, the researchers found that clerics who perpetrated abuse showed signs of emotional and sexual immaturity, personality disorders, and of course, pedophilia. One of the researchers' findings is that most of the perpetrators, both within the church as well as in other situations, are mostly male. But there are differences among the victims. While victims in secular institutions were more likely to be female, 55% versus 45%, most of the victims of abuse within the church were male, 79% versus 21%. These data were obtained by analyzing 53 existing studies from different countries. 40 of these studies were about abuse in the Catholic Church. Another result of the team, led by psychiatrist Harald Dreising, and criminologist Dieter Dölling, is that 3/4 of the incidents within the Catholic Church are so-called hands-on actions, where the victim was at a minimum touched. Most common was touching above, 23%, or below the clothes, 21%. Intercourse occurred in 17%, and oral sex in 12% of all cases. Hence, almost a third of the incidents were cases of aggravated abuse, Dölling said in his presentation of the results in Berlin. Well, this is interesting in one particular aspect, because I don't even know how to put it in order to not waste too much time trying to explain it. But basically, what it says is that a significant chunk of the hysteria that the press has triggered following the first or the second or the third sexual abuse scandal within the Catholic Church, a significant portion of that hysteria was not really called for, because when you compare, and yes, I'll go there. When you compare situations like Rotherham versus any case of abuse scandal in anywhere in Europe when it comes to the Catholic Church, Rotherham comes out worse, because when it comes to these in secular institutions, either in schools or purposely hidden by the state, most of the victims were indeed sexually abused, as opposed to aggravated battery, and lower crimes, basically. And I don't think it is politically incorrect for me to say that it is one thing, both are crimes, but they're different crimes. It is one thing, it says here that the most common crimes committed were a touching above or below the clothes. So these two together make 44% of the total cases. Now, it's one thing to be touched inappropriately once, and it's a whole other thing to be repeatedly raped. Yet, for some reason, the Rotherham case did not trigger a Europe-wide campaign against the state hiding sexual crimes by certain individuals, whereas every case of abuse within the Catholic Church triggered basically a witch hunt from the media against any sort of religious figure, as long as that religious figure was Christian, of course, because heaven forbid we say something bad about the religion of peace. Okay, let's get to the last one, because we already covered the one with handshaking. Coming from Der Spiegel. Emotion-based justice, it says. In the eyes of the feminist movement, the facts are obvious long before the verdict. Model Gina Lisa Lofing was raped. That substantial parts of her story may have been pure invention does not perturb the express judges. The independence of the judiciary is regarded as an important value in this country, that would be Germany, in principle at least. That sentencing is not left to popular outrage, but to experts who are trained to keep their calm even in the face of the most outrageous deeds is generally thought to be a great achievement of modernity. Hence, reasonable members of the public do not take kindly to people talking about handing out swift justice or who complain in general about sentencing being too lenient. As I said, this is the general principle. However, the person concerned shouldn't be a woman in a case of rape. Then the results of the investigators or the code of criminal procedure become irrelevant. Then all you need is a cursory look to arrive at an unambiguous verdict. Since early this month, actress Gina Lisa Lofing has had to defend herself in front of the district court Berlin Tiergarten. She is accused of having falsely accused two young men of raping her. False accusation is a serious crime. The penalty for falsely accusing someone of a felony, for example, out of revenge or to advance some cause, is up to 5 years in jail. In this case, the very fact that the public prosecution has initiated an investigation is seen as a scandal by many. From the point of view of this jury of laymen, consisting of feminists, enraged journalists, and federal minister for families, Manuela Schweißig, the case is simple. A young woman is being victimized for the second time. Not the rapists who turned a chance encounter into a nightmare have to appear in court, but the victim who dared to accuse her tormentors. Their centerpiece of evidence is a short video which one can still find on the internet with a little bit of effort. It shows the actress engaged in sex with the two men accused. While the two are edging one another, the woman is repeatedly heard to say no and stop it. It lies in the nature of complicated criminal cases that not everything that is relevant to the final verdict is immediately apparent. This is why these cases often take longer than the impatient public would like. In this case, too, there were indicators that things did not occur the way the defendant claims. According to a report by the Süddeutsche Zeitung published last week, the prosecution has substantial doubts about Lofing's claim that she was given date-rape drugs to make her more compliant and then forced to have sex. While searching the houses of the men accused, the police found a total of 11 video files. On these films, which aren't available on the internet, the model is seen to be dancing, singing, kissing both of the men, and intermittently leaving the room. Upon reviewing the video files, a toxicologist ruled out the possibility that Lofing had been under the influence of date-rape drugs on the night in question. In the first report to the police, Lofing's lawyer at the time spoke of consensual sexual acts. Initially, he only complained about the violation of the right to privacy when the video footage began to circulate. The claim of rape only came a few days later. As Der Spiegel is now reporting, Loffing met once more with one of the men she later accused on the evening after the night in question. Inquiries to Loffing's lawyer about whether they had also spent that night together remained unanswered. For the feminist movement, Loffing is a heroine no matter how contradictory her account may be. The mere attempt to investigate already has the whiff of misogyny, since the victim is exposed to a strenuous process where she has to relive a traumatic situation. That a woman might lie or manufacture a story that fits in better with her idea of truth is considered a negligible risk. And if she should indeed lie, then she's bound to have good reasons. We should always believe victims of rape, columnist Zelina Maxwell wrote in the Washington Post, a perfect summary of this point of view. The damage that is done when we erroneously fail to believe a victim is far greater than the damage when someone is falsely called a rapist. The next day of trial at the Berlin district is June the 27th. Among the feminist-minded public, the verdict is already fixed. It can only be not guilty. This is the expectation of commentators who see this case as a symbol for everything that's wrong with criminal law regarding sexual offenses. This is also the expectation of the Minister for Families, who has joined the hashtag Team Gina Lisa. That Loffing Stop It referred to the intercourse rather than the fact that the camera was pointed at her face seems to not even be a question for Schweissig. Well, I guess the most important aspect is that such a detailed article is being published to begin with. I'm trying to remember an article like this would have been more or less impossible 5 or 6 years ago. Publicly question such a quote-unquote clear-cut story. That would not have been allowed in print, at least not to this extent, several years ago. Now, I'm missing Mr. Gunnarsson in this show precisely because the trial took place 3 days ago. I mean, the second hearing, and if they deliver the verdict, I have no way of checking, and that's particularly annoying. Now, Mr. Huff, can you try to bring Mr. Buchanan on the show? Because I'm pretty much done with the news section, and
All right, let me see if I can go ahead and pull him up here. Give me just 1 second.
yep.
All right, letting him know we are ready for him now.
It's quite annoying to do it all by one person. I know I did it in the past. I don't know how I did it. I know I did it alone for like 2 months before I co-opted Jon when Hoofnagel could no longer come.
Let's see.
I guess I was more enthusiastic back then.
Let me see if I can contact him directly.
Now, in fairness, I told him that I think it was 7:45 London time, so that's like 1 minute and a half from now. But still.
Okay, I'm going to mute on this end.
Okay. This is another annoying aspect of YouTube. In the old format, we could just play in 1 or 2 songs whilst we were fixing these things.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. Unfortunately, I'm not getting an answer. But he has a message.
Yeah.
So hopefully he will come on. Why don't you continue on with anything else you might have for the time being, and
Well, that's the
hopefully
thing.
he will show up.
That's the thing. I don't have anything else. These were all, including the missing link from last week when Jon's internet broke down.
Ah,
Uh, these were basically all the things. Uh,
well, tell us a bit about your trip and what all you saw there and some of the items that came to you.
yeah, no.
No,
What do you want to know?
anything, man. Just fill time, dude. Fill time. So,
Yeah,
I don't know if Mike is going to be able to be here or not because I've not gotten any answer from him.
yeah. Well, worst case scenario, I can just mute myself for 10 minutes. It's the least worst thing.
Yeah. Well, if we want to do that, we can go ahead and do that. Give it 10, and if he doesn't show, then we call it a show.
Ah, wait a minute. He's on a different Skype account.
Okay, send him the link then.
I don't have the link. Oh, hold on a second.
Yeah. You get the link. You got the link, man.
He's added me on the new account. I had no idea that he has like a crap ton of Skype accounts. I can manage 20 Google accounts, but Skype accounts only one. That's already more than enough. Too bad I can't sing. I would sing myself. Oh, hello, Mike. All right. Uh, Update for some bizarre reason. Google is okay with me not broadcasting with a webcam, but is not okay with Mike broadcasting with a webcam. So we'll have to wait until Mike plugs in a webcam.
That is odd.
Yeah, it just says the Hangouts can't access your webcam and it doesn't allow him to move on to the next screen and get on live.
Okay. All right, not a problem. I mean, I've got a webcam here, but I'm actually using the setting to use the audio only bandwidth. So even after he plugs in his webcam won't be showing to
Well,
any.
even if it does, I mean, I don't have a webcam at all connected to my computer, just an analog microphone set and, strapped on a coffee cup. And that's it. I mean, it would be quite embarrassing if I were to have a webcam now.
Interesting. All right, well, we will await him, and then we'll move on.
Yep.
Hey, can you hear me now? Does it work now?
Wow, I can hear you beautifully, Jon.
Yup.
Excellent. It seems my internet provider was having issues. Lots of other people with that same internet provider in Germany also reporting problems, but apparently it seems to work now. Let's hope that it keeps working.
Well, we are awaiting Mr. Buchanan.
Yeah, basically, apparently, on Mike's end, you can't get in without a webcam, even though it allows you and me perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, I have a webcam, I just turned it off, so...
That's interesting. I guess that I'm the only weirdo that Google allows without a webcam, because I don't have anything video plugged into my desktop, like, at all. I only plug it when it's absolutely necessary. Otherwise,
Yeah, maybe in Astrop 1 you actually need to have a telescreen to log in here.
That was mean, and you know it. Yeah. So now that you're back, any further news about that particular false rape case? I read the article as you were off.
Yeah, so on the 27th, which was Monday, there was supposed to be a verdict, but then there was this kind of scandal where the defenders, so the lawyers of Lofink, they caused some sort of ruckus because they didn't want a video to be played, and then they stormed out of the room, and then later they returned, and they claimed that the judge was biased, and they've instigated some sort of procedure to possibly get the judge removed from that case. So because of that, the verdict has been postponed, and it's not quite clear when the case is actually going to be resolved. So, yeah.
Why would you? That sounds like 5-year-old children.
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
Nevertheless, a reasonably fair coverage. Oh, hello, Mr. Buchanan. And here we go again.
Hi, Lucian.
Oh boy. Mike, we can't hear you. If you could go ahead and check your microphone settings and your volume, please.
Okay. You still can't hear me now?
We got you now.
Now we can hear you.
Okay. How's the audio quality?
You sound great.
Decent enough. Very decent.
Okay. Should I put on headphones to minimize echo?
Not enough to worry about here. You sound just fine. We can go ahead and roll with it.
Okay, great.
All right. Let's talk Brexit, Mike. How did you live the great moment?
Sorry, how did I
live?
Well, it was a wonderful decision. Unfortunately, I don't think it's ever going to be implemented.
Oh, really? Why?
Because I think the numbers are all against it. It's the referendum vote was never legally binding on Parliament. 490 out of 650 MPs are Remainers. Theresa May, who will probably she's very much the front runner now to be the next Conservative Party leader and therefore Prime Minister. And she's in the Remain camp. I think this is going to be a classic stitch up because the British people in the eyes of the establishment got the decision wrong, so the decision can't be honoured.
Yeah, that sounds like classical case of stitch up.
Yep. And this is a woman who, in opposition, I think maybe 13 or 14 years ago, was happy to pose in a Fawcett Society T-shirt saying this is what a feminist looks like.
Yeah, we all know what Theresa May is, and you know it's not a mistake of the English language when I say what Theresa May is.
Indeed, indeed. Well, she she's presided over a Home Office, which has, among other things, resolutely followed the Duluth model on domestic violence. The place is crawling with people from the department is crawling with people from Women's Aid, and yeah, it's. I mean, she's shocking. I mean, we sent a Freedom of Information request on male circumcision, which is illegal in the UK, and the police report into the Home Office, and they evaded it. They evaded the whole thing with some weasel words, but didn't deny that it's illegal. So you know, it's not going to be a great day for, well, I mean, none of the main candidates have any track record of anything approaching anti-feminism, apart from Boris Johnson, who when he was elected mayor, fired a few feminist parasites from City Hall, which is a rare bit of good news. But he's out of the race now because Michael Gove has basically stabbed him in the back.
Yeah, sounds like classical politics. Now, the same question that I asked Jon after the vote, I'm going to ask you. Would you think that it would be a good thing for the advancement of non-feminist thought to get out of the European Union or not?
Yeah, I think it would be good on balance. I mean, there's no. I mean, there were sort of quite. There were a number of important feminists or powerful feminists that would have made life a lot more difficult afterwards. There's no doubt about that. But it still remains, even out of Europe, if the UK ratifies the Istanbul Convention, then anti-feminism could be made illegal as hate speech.
Yeah, it's not particularly the Istanbul Convention per se, but there is, of course, the European Framework for Promotion of Tolerance, which basically indeed does make non-feminist thought as hate speech. Not that I particularly care, but yeah. All right, let's get to basically the topic. Our glorious conference is approaching, isn't it?
It is just a week off now. The weeks have flown, I tell you.
Oh yes, indeed. I mean, this morning I woke up and oh my God, today is July the 1st. In 6 days, I'm going to have to head to London. Yeah.
No, there's a real buzz. People are really excited. You know, I can sort of feel it in my correspondence every day. People are really pumped up about this conference, and we only now have 4 tickets left.
Oh.
So it's close to selling out, and it's going to be an awesome conference. I've no doubt about that at all.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I guess it will probably be similar to what happened in Detroit, or well, St. Clair Shores, Michigan, 2 years ago. The most important aspect would be what happens between the speeches and after the speeches than what happens during.
Indeed. But I think the speaker profiles, there's more, I guess it was fairly, in Detroit it's fairly North America centric. I mean, nothing wrong with that. But I think this time there's more of an international flavour, and we have, for example, a good number of people coming from Scandinavian countries. I'm very pleased to say, from Finland, Sweden, and Norway, and we have a Norwegian speaker. So I'm really looking forward to the second day when the Norwegian guard is speaking. We have someone from Germany, Thomas Walter, Anil Kumar from India. It's going to be an interesting day.
Yeah, it's going to definitely be an interesting day. I'm going to troll everyone by speaking either in Norwegian or in Italian.
You'll be alone in the room in either event.
So who's coming from Germany?
Thomas Walter, who heads up the biggest sort of what you could call political men's rights organization in Germany.
Thomas Walter.
So Thomas, oh gosh, have I got that wrong? This is embarrassing. I shall have to look at. Okay, while we're chatting, I'll find the timetable, Lucian.
Yeah, because
Just wondering, I've never heard that name actually.
No, okay, I just need to find that. But he's thought to be a pretty good speaker. But I mean, most of the day we'll start off with Janet Bloomfield, but after that, I think it's all pretty well much about practical activism.
Very nice. I'm hoping that Janet will have a speech on why women should not vote. just so she.
I'm kind of hoping she doesn't.
Why not?
No, I mean that would be an albatross around our party's neck for the rest of the time, Lucian. So I'm kind of hoping that that she'll stick to what she says she's going to speak about. It's not that she doesn't. It's not that she doesn't make an interesting case, but it's you know, it's not for this conference, I don't think. Thomas Walter. He's an executive committee member of. Now I don't know how you pronounce this. Mandate. And he's going to be talking on men's rights in Germany, issues, activities, and challenges.
So, Jon, any opinions about?
We had once. I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, Lucian, we heard about two. I think it's two men's rights parties in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, including Zurich. But
yes, Switzerland and Austria. Yes.
Yep.
Sorry, you're right. Sorry, Switzerland and Austria. But I've heard nothing. I've heard nothing from them. Anyway, but you know, we'll learn plenty from Thomas Walter about Germany. Anyway, we'll hear from Guttorm Grant on Norway. Yourself, you know, I'm really looking forward to your sort of to the wide panorama of your speech.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to write it because I haven't written it yet.
No, so I think some things are best left to the last few days. Otherwise, you know, yeah.
Yeah, well, basically,
I mean, frankly, you know, I could have written my speech 6 months ago, but I would have spent 1,000 hours on it since then. So there isn't much point.
Yeah, that's pretty much my rationale too. Now, since Jon here is from Germany, I was going to ask him to give us more about the organization.
Well, Mandat is basically a political lobbying organization that does all sorts of advocacy for men and for boys. They, of course, they're not you know, the biggest organization. I mean, bigger than any other men's rights organization, but they're not. They don't have the kind of clout to actually move positions on most things, but. They are, of course, operating on a shoestring budget, and they're doing their best. So definitely, their work should be supported. And it's interesting to see what they have to say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think they're believed to be the biggest organisation that has a strong political focus. Is that's right? Hopefully.
Yeah, that's right. There's basically two big ones. There's Mandat and there's Argens, and yeah, I believe that Mandat is a bit bigger than Argens.
Yeah, we have an attendee from Argens, so I'm looking forward to meeting him too.
Yeah, that's
we have
also...
you know, we have people from the Netherlands, Spain, France. You know, good continental European turnout, I think.
Who's coming from the Netherlands?
Oh, I don't have the name off the top of my head, I'm afraid. And I think he'd probably not wish his name to be bandied about without his prior agreement.
No, the organization I'm more interested in than the person.
I don't think I have him associated with a particular organization.
I see.
We had not too many weeks ago we had a protest, anti-MGM protest in Golders Green in North London, which is the I think it's the area in the country with the highest population, with the highest Jewish population. And we had a guy fly over from Amsterdam for that and fly back the same day, which I thought was pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of,
But he wasn't aware of too many people in the Netherlands campaigning against MGM.
yeah, speaking of anti-MGM protests, there was an incident at your last protest, wasn't it?
The one before that, the arrest, are you referring to?
Yep.
Yeah, I still haven't heard if I'm going to be charged, so I expect I will at some point. I'm just hoping I don't get something asking me to be in court next Friday, because that could be a problem.
Yeah, indeed. What was the issue? You blocked the circulation, or what?
Yeah, I just stepped out into well, it was in Parliament Square, and it was only that morning that I decided to do this. So I just stepped out and wouldn't move, much to the much to the annoyance of the driver of a big red London bus. So he stopped and he got fairly abusive, and then he sort of he started his bus again, towards me. It's at a bit of speed, and I just stood there. I mean, I thought, is this guy really going to mow down a member of the public with people video recording? I'm guessing wildly that he probably won't. So I had quite a long conversation with a very nice policeman who gave me plenty of reasons why I shouldn't stand in the road, and I thanked him for that and explained I was going to do it anyway. And he said, well, he'd have to arrest me. To which apparently I responded, "Cool," according to the notes that he wrote. But we've done a number of protests in Parliament Square, and yeah, I mean, we are a political party, so it's the place to try and get noticed.
Yeah, I guess the most regrettable aspect is that it didn't hit the mainstream media.
No, it didn't. But then no, I think what we're going to need to do is I mean, there's no question that civil disobedience is going to be an element in our work. How big an element I don't quite know at the moment, or the form of it. But I'm hoping on International Men's Day that we and other organisations make a big impact in Parliament Square.
Yeah, because on IMD at the very least they're going to look up for every amateur journalist out there. That is to say, every journalist in the mainstream media will going to look out for news related to gender issues concerning men.
Yeah, but I mean, whether the mainstream media will cover it, I suspect not. I think we're just going to have to create an impact of a size that it would, almost to embarrass them into covering it.
Yeah, I suspect you're correct, given that the mainstream media has already proven itself to be unreliable, even on issues that, let's say, are more popular than this, but they're still politically correct.
Well, we have. I mean, here we are a week from the conference, and the global mainstream media hasn't written so much as a sentence, as far as I'm aware. I mean, other than Breitbart, whether you include them in mainstream media, I don't know. But we have some interesting journalists coming over. I mean, was I coming over? A guy from the Netherlands, Marco Vischer. Is going to be covering the conference, and we have people from 2 or 3 national newspapers, including the chief reporter of one of them. So no, I think we'll have more coverage, than we saw in Detroit.
Marco Vischert, I presume that Marco Vischert, the journalist and not the hotel manager.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he's written some interesting stuff, and he's in the last 6 or 7 months he's interviewed Camille Paglia and Christina Hoff Sommers. And so yeah, he's pretty switched on to gender issues.
Yep, I've seen. Sorry, I've read his interview with Camille Paglia. I had no idea that he interviewed Huff Summers too. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
at the worst, he's a he covers the issues very decently. At the worst, at best, he
yes,
introduces personal analysis, and it just comes out as glorious. So yeah, definitely a
right.
good addition. I'm sorry to sound a bit random, but I've only read your updates, and I have to say that this is a very, very professional thing. On many of the people who will come at the conference will probably never know how much work Mike has put into this event. I mean, he texted every one of us updates every 2 days with every single detail that I'm sure it will be glorious, but I haven't read in any of your emails about the particular publications that will come. So that's why I'm asking these kinds of things as opposed to what anyone would expect me to ask.
Okay.
Because I know all the other things.
Yeah. No, I've probably been doing a bit too much communicating for some people's taste, I'm sure. I can't divulge what those sort of mainstream titles are, but I'll happily do it after this, Lucian.
I see. It makes perfect sense in a way. Okay. What else should we? Oh yeah. Any idea on why the dangerous faggot won't be honoring his own self-invitation?
No, it came out of the blue, and he didn't even bother to write it himself. He got one of his people to write it. But I've got to say, I think at one time we hoped that he'd be a big draw in terms of people join, people coming to the conference. But to be honest, I've had no evidence of that. Nobody said when they're booking that they were looking forward to seeing Milo. Nobody has asked for. I think only one person has expressed any regret that he's pulled out. I mean, he was always, as you may know, Lucian, a controversial figure, in particular for one thing, which was his support for MGM. On the basis
he kind of backtracked on that in somewhere during his tour, and pretty much changed his position quite a lot since then.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking back to the I think it was the Rubin report. I could be wrong.
Yeah, something like that. But also during the later speeches during his tour of the universities. So he kind of did change quite a lot of his position. Nevertheless, I still do agree that was a highly controversial and yes, I'll call it dumb position to take to begin with.
Yeah, but I mean, it's difficult to believe that his retraction, if he's done it, is sincere, because the basis of his support for MGM, if you can call it that, was his aesthetic preferences. Now, I hardly think that those will have changed overnight. So if he's sort of backtracked, it's presumably to ingratiate himself with MRAs.
Yeah, although to be fair, one can still hold aesthetic preferences whilst at the same time acknowledging that they should not be forcibly inflicted upon minors. Methinks.
Yeah, I look forward to a man supporting FGM on that basis.
I think if we try hard enough, we can find some Gabon or Ghana or some places like that.
Now that would be controversial, wouldn't it?
Now that would be controversial.
I'll have to email Milo with a suggestion.
Now, to be fair, I think his pulling off of this was not necessarily his decision. I mean, and I can't say exactly where I know these details, but nevertheless, I do know them. And it's pretty obvious, even if you don't know inside details. Basically, when he started his tour, it was supposed to be some thing that he pulled off to get, YouTube views and extend his online persona. Then suddenly it turned out to be something that actually changed hearts and minds somewhere down the road. That tends to attract, and you and I both know when it comes to the United States political climate, when something like this happens, tends to attract big donors and bigger interests. And I wouldn't be completely surprised if someone, we can all guess where that someone may come and say, look, we're going to pay you this amount of money to do this more often, as opposed to one speaking engagement every 5 days, do one every 2 days, and do more of that. And basically crowded his schedule to such an extent that flying to London just for the conference and then go back to the United States would have been logistically impossible. I think this is what happened. What happened basically.
Well, someone the email that informed me he wasn't going to make it referred to two different things, implying that they you know that they were the reason that he had to pull out. But then someone looked into it, and those things were a week or two in advance or after London. So you know, who knows? I mean, as long as he doesn't, you know, he hasn't, to the best of my knowledge, called himself an MRA, and which I think pulling out the way he did out of the conference would have you know, nailed that claim anyway.
Mm. No, he didn't. He never.
But if you know, I mean, look, I mean, his role, I guess, you know, is to show feminists, you know, for what they are, and he seems to be doing a pretty good job at that. So I applaud that, if nothing else.
Yeah, and you know, it's nothing bad in being a professional shit stirrer, isn't it?
No, indeed, no, and he is spectacularly good at that. It's got to be said.
Everyone appreciates a good pot being stirred to such an extent.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, because he's coming in for a lot of grief from Black Lives Matter, isn't he? And the only thing I've seen in connection with that was that he was accused by some black people of not supporting black American youths, and this I guess was in the wake of is it the Privilege Fund or the White Privilege Fund or something for for young white Americans, and so in response to the charge that he wasn't financially supporting young black Americans, he said, "You must be kidding! I've been supporting them throughout this tour." He said, "And sometimes I even have my driver take them back home afterwards," which I thought was yeah.
For those who don't know, this Greek Jewish guy Yiannopoulos, he makes a very good. He makes a particular point in his love for black dick, basically. So, and that's what actually contributes quite a lot to his success, because he's social justice proof. What are you going to tell? What are you going to tell to a literally cocksucker who likes black dick? Are you gonna tell him that he's heteronormative patriarchal? Really? It's not going to work. It's not going to stick.
No, and he knows it,
Absolutely, he wouldn't be doing it if he didn't know.
And I think also he was a bit disturbed by some of the criticisms of Christina Hoff Sommers in certain quarters. I personally think those criticisms. I think those criticisms were well founded and supported them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know I couldn't sleep a night because of that. I mean, I can't sing Cry Me a River, but if I could, I would sing Cry Me a River.
Yes. Yeah.
to everyone who's butthurt over Paul criticizing Christina Hoff Sommers. Sorry, when you peddle gynocentric nonsense for 30 years, alongside with decent stuff, yeah, sure. But nevertheless, when you peddle gynocentric nonsense for 30 years, well, you should expect that at some point in time, someone will notice and say, look, there's the naked emperor.
Yeah, I think she needs to do a presentation where she says, my name is Christina Hoff Sommers and I'm no longer a feminist.
Absolutely, that's long overdue.
I mean, the sort of equity feminist label may have had some legitimacy in '94 when she wrote Who Sold Feminism. I think in 2016 it's looking ridiculous.
And this is probably one of the few cases where I can agree with the argument, because it's the current year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
By the way, who else is coming from Canada? So I know who with whom I can make jokes with about the current year.
From Canada, right? Okay. Well, speaker-wise, there's Karen Strawn, of course. Janice Fiamengo,
Great.
Janet Bloomfield, Judgy Bitch,
Mhm.
and we have a good number of attendees, apart from speakers coming from Canada. So that's rather good. And we actually have a few party members in Canada. I'd personally be very supportive. Not that it'd be my decision, but I'd be very supportive of next year's conference being in Canada.
I see. Well,
There's just some interesting.
go ahead, please.
I'm sorry, Lucian. Go on.
No, I was going to say that considering that Mrs. Fiamengo is coming, I might actually spend most of the time talking deep politics and philosophy with Mrs. Fiamengo.
Right.
Yeah, because basically we're as far as I know, and I could be wrong, but basically we're the two nerds out there who basically spend our time studying ideology.
Right. She's a very impressive character, and she just has a big British following. And it didn't take long for her table in the evening to be sold out to people who wanted to sit on her table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, she has the two advantages. She knows what she's talking about, and she's a woman. That's basically all you need. And I'm serious about that. I mean, I know it sounds a bit ridiculous, but it is nonetheless true. I mean, if you look all over this conglomerate of non-feminist individuals, women consistently get a much higher following than men. Across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, of course, very knowledgeable women get a much higher following than less knowledgeable women, but nevertheless, highly knowledgeable men get a much lower following than highly knowledgeable women.
Indeed. No, I mean, her videos are awesome, and the guy who makes them, Steve Brulé, is coming over.
Looking forward
of all the people who are
shake that man's hand, really.
Yeah. And of all the people who are coming, there's no one who wants some protests as much as Steve. I mean, in fact, I expect he'll be furious if nobody turns up.
Yeah, so we can get more full HD videos that we can watch.
Yeah, I don't think it's very likely that no one will show up. They just can't help themselves.
Yeah, well, the thing we're hoping is to find a homegrown Big Red.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, because Trigglypuff just doesn't cut it, isn't it?
Oh, that was extraordinary, wasn't it?
It was, but Big Red is.
She may as well have worn a T-shirt. She may as well have worn a T-shirt saying "I have mental health issues." But these are seriously disturbed people, aren't they? They're really disturbed.
Yeah, but I can't stop myself from laughing. Although I'll have to admit again that Big Red was a much better hit than Trigglypuff.
Oh no, she was a class act. A class act.
Yeah, apparently.
So I mean, so there's a few. I mean, apart from so Steve's going to be doing some video recordings and interviews and so on. We have Hannah Wallen doing. She's going to be the conference official videographer and photographer. We have a very talented guy who's going to be video recording the presentations, and I'm hoping that we're going to have we can have Alison Tiemann and one or two colleagues from the Honey Badger Brigade also coming over to video record some interviews and so on, and because they have a lot of fans here in the UK. So it'll be great to see them all again.
Yeah, and besides, there are a few Honey Badger Brigade members that are from Britain.
Indeed. So we have Dr. Randa McCann, who's just great.
One technical question: will we have decent internet at the venue?
in terms of a live in terms of a live stream, Lucian. No. It's it just isn't of a. I mean, we actually did a lot of work on that, and we concluded that a lot of people would, or some people would be disinclined to attend if they could just get it live.
No. That's not what I asked.
Sorry.
What I asked is if I can get decent internet to live stream myself from in front of the venue or things of that nature. That's what I asked.
Okay. I'd hope so. I mean, it is London's #1, conferences and exhibitions venue. When we looked at internet live streaming, there was a charge of several £1,000s from the venue for doing their part of that. Whether there's enough bandwidth, I mean, sorry, I'm not technical, Lucian.
I see.
Well, it didn't make sense.
No, absolutely. That's a huge amount of cash. That's not worth it. And besides, I completely understand. I completely understand the decision.
I was going to say, the event is covering its costs, but it sort of had to. We're making less money from it than PayPal. I'll say no more.
I'm not surprised at all when it comes to PayPal fees. They're a dick.
They're appalling.
So I guess I can't please my two fans with the live broadcasts from the conference. Well, I'm deeply disappointed. And when I say my two fans, I might be overly optimistic. Was there anyone interested in talking to me?
I'm sure you got plenty, Lucian.
No, serious question. Was anyone interested in talking to me at those tables?
When you say, sorry, anyone
interested in talking to me at those tables that you set up after?
Yes, of course. Yes. There's some people who asked to be sat at your table. So that's all sorted.
More than two.
Well, I can't promise that, Lucian. But I mean, yeah. I mean, I can tell you if you want. Are you sure you want to know?
Yeah, only if there's more than two. If there's two or less, I don't want to know.
Okay. I shouldn't have asked that question, should I? Now, sorry. Now, the way I've got this, Lucian, on the first night, at the first meal, you'll be sharing a table with Paul Elam and Guttorm Grant.
Wow, that's true.
And that and that table is full. I don't know how many of the 10 are asked to be sat with you rather than Paul or Guttorm. And
well, that's true.
And you're with and you're with Janet Bloomfield on the second meal. I mean, she obviously got a bit emotional, but I said, look, someone had to sit with you. and that's almost full. I think we have 2 more spaces on that table.
Well, it's better than I expected.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I don't have any further questions. I mean, I'm done with my foolish questions and my amateurish questions, because basically the way I invited you was, well, let's be light-hearted and talk about the things. You said that you have something that you must cover in this interview. I don't remember what. Oh yeah, about Herbert Purdy something.
Oh, this is Herbert Purdy. Yeah, no, in fact, there's 2 or 3 things. Do we have a few minutes?
We do have at least 30, so go ahead.
Okay. No, I mean, I won't be long. Yes, Herbert Purdy is speaking at the conference. His talk is entitled "Their Angry Creed," and it's also the title of the book that has just been published, of the same name, and it's basically a history of feminism. Because at the moment, if you want a history of feminism, it's kind of you know, it's here and there, and it'll take you forever and a day to really to get the whole picture. But he's managed to do it in about 500 pages, and it's available to it's on sale now, and he'll be signing copies of the book during the conference. There's 6 or 7 people, including myself, signing books. Hopefully he'll sell a few copies of his. It's an extraordinary book. It really is. It's really quite something. The other 2 things I wanted to chat about were first of all the Labour Party. Now the Labour Party is in the middle of committing suicide at the moment.
Yes, I know, but please tell me more.
Yeah, well they have a very left-wing leader, Jeremy Corbyn, who was voted for by over 80. He was voted for by over 80% of Labour Party members. But at the same time, over 80% of Labour MPs have last week signed, or in the last week, have signed a motion of no confidence in him. Now what does that tell you about democracy? Yeah, so you know, day by day goes by, and no one can quite believe that he's hanging on in there, and we think that the reason he is that is so as to force his enemies to have a new, if you like, a new ballot for a member. And the problem then would be for all these anti-Corbyn MPs, of course, is that the Labour Party members are just going to say yes, we still want Corbyn. So yeah, so just a huge gap. I mean, but there always has been.
But I do remember that Corbyn got in there as a result of a very contested ballot, because basically anyone could vote if one was willing to pay the £20 fee to be registered to vote within the Labour Party.
Well, it was even lower than that, Lucian. There was a stage where the Labour Party would allow you to become a member for £3.
Ah, there you go. So because I remember a hashtag on Twitter trending called "Conservatives for Corbyn," and quite a numerous amount of non-leftists that I know personally from Britain became for a week members of the Labour Party just so they can vote for Corbyn. And then, of course, they left the party. So what I'm trying to say here is that maybe, just maybe, Corbyn may not actually be such a legitimate leader of the Labour Party.
Yeah, I don't think the number of people doing that was high. I mean, I think the membership has just historically been far less left wing than the party. And I mean, historically, after it's lost an election, the Labour Party has always lurched to the left.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that the Labour Party might break up in the coming days and weeks.
And they're going to be replaced by what? The Greens?
Who knows? But I think there probably is I think there is a place for a new left-wing party. Just as in my view, there's a place for a new right-wing party, because that certainly isn't the bloody Conservatives. David Cameron has always been a feminist-friendly figure, and he's about to be replaced by a female feminist. So it's just I mean, for a supposedly right-of-centre party, it's just ludicrous.
Mm-hmm. Although, to be fair, Cameron has gotten quite a lot of flack from the feminists for refusing to wear the "This is what a feminist looks like" T-shirt. Hasn't he?
Well, yeah, but yeah, I mean, he dodged that bullet, but all the other party leaders virtually sort of wore that damnable T-shirt. But his actions, I mean, from 2009, the year before he came to power, he announced his intention to have all women shortlists for selecting candidates, and so I mean, I think we knew which side of the fence he was on at that point.
Yeah, it's one of those things, actions tend to speak a lot slightly louder than words, and especially actions that actually matter. I've never been able to understand, and this kind of mentality has infected quite a lot of political parties in Europe, not just Western Europe, and definitely not just Britain. I still haven't been able to find out how come such a significant amount of party leaders, left and right, all over Europe, have come up with this idea that it's such a fabulous thing to have these kinds of things, all women shortlists.
Yeah, I think it's just pandering to whiny women. At the end of the day. I mean, the Labour Party has had all women shortlists for a number of years, and they deliver people like the damnable Jess Phillips MP, who very nearly stopped Philip Davis MP from having the first ever debate in Parliament about men's issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's speaking at the conference, of course, on the justice gender gap. So we're very much looking forward to that. He's a real hero over here. And the final thing I wanted to chat about was the final evening of the conference. I'm hoping that plenty of people are going to make it into London, into central London, to a place that we call Harry's Bar. It's a large pub in the centre of London where a fair number of British MRAs met Angry Harry for the first and sadly last time, possibly about six or 8 months ago, before his untimely demise. And he wasn't a well-off man, but he picked up a bar bill of £135, which was quite astonishing. But just a wonderful man, and so we've named this place Harry's Bar ever since, and it's just a great pub, very good food, outstanding beer, and it should be a good end to the conference, I hope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jon, you wanted to ask something?
No, I wanted to answer the question you asked previously. But one theory I have why, in particular, sort of party leaders like Cameron are in favor of all women shortlists might be because it reduces competition within their own party. Because if you have these all women shortlists and you elect less capable female candidates, then there's less competition for leadership within the party, and it's probably easier to keep intra-party rivalry to a minimum. That would be one guess why.
Well, I mean, in the UK, all of the parties in Scotland have female leaders. Plaid Cymru, the Welsh party, has a female leader, and it looks like the Conservatives are about to have a female leader. Jeremy Corbyn, his main competitor for the leadership is a lesbian feminist by the name of Angela Eagle. So we could have almost a clean sweep of all the political parties of significance in having female leaders soon.
Yeah, that's a bit unprecedented.
And we have. I mean, one of the candidates for the Conservative leadership, who's pulled out, thank God, is a woman called Nicky Morgan. Now she is the Minister for Women and Equalities, and also the Education Secretary. And it won't surprise you to learn that despite the failing, boys and men failing badly throughout the education system, the Department for Education doesn't have a single pound dedicated to researching that issue or doing anything about it.
Yeah, of course not. Of course, we know that the equality means equality for women.
Exactly. Well, we have of course a women's equality party. They haven't come up with a single.
I remember that thing. What did it come out of it?
It came out of I think it came out of a meeting of some particularly stupid women. One of whom is a sort of TV personality called Sandy Toksvig, who we always refer to as Sandy Toxic. And both she and the party lead, she's the party spokesman, and both she and the party's leader, Sophie Walker, have won 2 of our Lying Feminist of the Month awards. But of course, the media never picks up on this kind of stuff. And the BBC have been, as you'd expect from the BBC, utterly shameless in giving them airtime.
Yeah, I remember at one moment you were asked, I think it was on the BBC, about your Lying Feminist of the Month award, And I remember that the recipient was in the studio with you, and she just brushed it off. And
yeah, no, you're right, Lucian. That was Caroline Criado Perez.
Yeah, Perez, yes.
Who's now won 3 of the awards. So she was asked by the presenter on This Morning. He said something like, "Caroline, can you explain to me why you were presented with a Lying Feminist of the Month award?" And she did some jazz hands and said, "Because I lied." and you'd think that the presenter would then say, "Well, are you going to apologise for that, or how do you explain that you lied?" But he looked like a goldfish gasping for air, and he quickly recovered himself and changed the subject.
Yeah, I know. I remember that.
They are utterly shameless, and it's something that I may include in my conference speech. The idea that we're going to get anywhere through shaming tactics, I think is a fantasy. The same is true, I think, sadly, of rational arguments. I mean, when I hear someone has done a new article on the gender pay gap, I could weep. It's like, oh, okay, the last 10,000 articles haven't done anything, but this is good. This is the one that's going to make the feminists say, you know what, you're right there. No, it was nonsense all along.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about convincing the feminists. It's about convincing the 80% of the population that are not feminists.
Indeed, but the problem is that without the mainstream media, giving voices to anti-feminists and non-feminists, it's just we're in a losing battle, and we have to fight a different battle, I think.
In fairness, go ahead.
In terms of the coverage, even the mainstream media in the last 5 years or so, we've seen a vast increase in the types of non-feminist stuff that gets put out there and the stuff that is critical of feminism. Lots of articles that 5 years ago you've never seen in the mainstream media, but now we can see that in big newspapers, big online publications, publishing at least occasionally arguments that are critical of feminism. So I think in this arena we are at least slowly advancing. Most of the media is still after feminists.
It is getting better. It is getting better, but I think to people who are not in the men's rights movement, there's the occasional article, but then again, that's 1 in 1,000. I just don't think they're making any impact. And at the end of the day, I mean, far too much of the men's rights movement is still online, and I think we've sort of nailed feminism online, and it's time to move into the real world. Because at the end of the day, that's where feminists, and their male poodles are working, and the men's rights movement really is almost invisible in the real world. I'm sorry to say.
Depends on the area, but yeah, I don't disagree with that. Nevertheless, I have to say that I have changed several hearts and minds using one. Specifically on the topic of the gender pay gap, using exactly one link, the one when the Time magazine wrote against it. So in the terms of the mainstream media covering non-feminist arguments, well, sometimes they do. And whenever they do, that's actually a very important nail in the coffin of this toxic ideology, because even though I consider it moronic, nevertheless, it is true that a significant chunk of the populace is much better convinced when you argue your position supported by a time.com link than on whatever, a less than gushy cathedral media source.
Yeah, and I suppose the point I'm trying to make, Lucian, perhaps not well, is that all this stuff, it has no impact on feminists in power, on the men who accede to them. It just, I mean, this stuff doesn't, it doesn't impact on them. Which is why our strategy at the next election is going to be to stand in 20 conservative seats, marginal seats, with a view to making sure that the Conservatives in those MPs are not re-elected.
Yes,
and I think
absolutely.
as a challenge, I think that you know, if the whole changing the cultural narrative thing, I think is great, but far too much of the resources of the men's rights movement is focused on that, and not on fighting feminists in the real world.
Now, if I may, I'm going to pull an Andrew Breitbart on you. You know, Andrew Breitbart used to say, when he was alive, of course, that there is a gap of roughly 20 years between culture and politics. Once you change the culture, it takes roughly 20 years until that particular change in the culture starts reflecting in politics. And this has been seen in the past with other issues, such as, for instance, you know, legalizing marijuana. The culture was already prepared for that as early as 1985 or 1990, but it only became feasible politically 20 years later, around the 2010s in the English-speaking world. Now, admittedly, in the Netherlands it was earlier, but that was a special case. And I think the same will have to apply here too. Changing the cultural narrative now and expecting political results later. And I can give you similar examples with other issues too. It pretty much happens that Andrew Breitbart might have been correct, and I don't see a reason why he wouldn't be correct on this one too.
I could see very good reasons. I think gynocentrism. I think
is older than the prohibition of drugs. True.
But I mean, the understanding of men's issues in the population at large is just woeful, and I think we have to accept that. My view is that is that we'll have to change the politics, and that will lead to much more of a change in the cultural narrative. I mean, perhaps it's because I'm impatient. I don't know. But
you can see that again.
No, I think
nothing wrong with being impatient, mind you.
No, but I think it's a challenge. I mean, if you look at the time, effort, and cost, Lucian, of successfully contesting 20 Conservative marginal seats, and thereby, I mean, and thereby allowing, let's say, almost all of them would have a Labour MP then elected, that could change the outcome of the election. I think it's going to have to be that way round, and it'll take a tiny amount of the resources to do that, compared with this big sort of cultural narrative change war. But it's going to have to mean that people, in supporting that, are just going to have to do. They're going to have to do things that they historically haven't done too much. I mean, I've got to be careful here, otherwise I'm going to be giving my whole speech away. But no, I see it the other way. I see it the other way around. I think we have to get to make a number of politicians lose their seats, and then people will say, well, hang on, how has that happened? And if we focus on issues like fathers' rights, which is probably in the UK, and I suspect in most countries, the number one men's rights issues that people understand, it shouldn't be too difficult. The 20 marginal seats were won at the last election by between, I think, 75 and 1,900 votes. So if we could reduce, if we can get those kind of numbers of votes, if we can deter those kind of numbers of people from voting Conservative when they otherwise would, all else being equal, J4MB could alter the outcome of the next election. And I see that as entirely feasible. I mean, yeah. I mean, to me, I just, yeah, that's what we got to do.
Yeah. Now, you are correct on the point of impatience, which is why I somewhat agree entirely with Paul. That is to say that one way or the other, both are necessary. And on the issue of fathers' rights, you're absolutely correct. It's the easiest to sell, and it's the easiest understood by the general public. As is MGM, to be fair. I mean, let's not forget that MGM is a highly one issue on the cultural level in certain countries, such as Denmark, for instance, or Norway. So probably focusing a lot more on these two would not be a bad idea, considering.
Well, I don't think. I mean, at least in the UK, Lucian, MGM has no political traction.
Not yet.
It would actually be a vote loser in some areas.
Yeah, admittedly, because there are the areas where they're majority or at least significantly Jewish or Muslim. In which case, yeah, indeed. All right, I think we've had quite a decent chat. Jon, any further questions?
No further questions.
Or comments of any kind? No? I'm going to have to mark. Go ahead.
If we're ending it, then I have one final comment, but I don't know if you want to do that.
No. I was about to say that I'm going to mark the day in the calendar when Jon doesn't have any further comments. Yeah, well, with that said, Mike, thanks a lot for joining, and looking forward to shaking your hand in 6 days from now, basically, right?
Likewise. No, it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
It's going to be absolutely glorious. And with that said, I'm going to let Jon have the final word.
Okay, thank you, Mike, for being with us. And to all our listeners, I have one final piece of advice, which is to take the red pill.